Welcome in to the 48 Minutes podcast on The Lead, presented by Bet Online. I'm Ross Geiger, the former NBA video coordinator, having spent time with the Suns, Bucks, and Knicks, and I'm joined alongside Bruce Bernstein, our four-time Emmy Award winner who spent more than 3 decades at ESPN, producing NBA shows, SportsCenter, and soaking up knowledge from the best hoop analysts in the business. And also joining us, per usual, is the 2-time Emmy Award winner, Michael Worldbeef Freer, who is a senior writer at StatFactor, specializing in writing advanced statistical NBA reports for various announcers across the league. This is episode number 126, the Ben Shepherd episode, as the 26th overall selection in last year's draft wears number 26 on the Indiana Pacers. Indy's rookie swingman had some impressive showcases during his rookie year and should be a contributing factor for Rick Carlisle's squad heading into the new season. Before we get started, just a quick reminder, BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything sports betting. Every stat, matchup breakdown, and even live odds and spreads to be bet on during the games. With the largest catalog of odds on everything from football, MLB playoffs, NHL, NBA, to political props. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with one of our over 150 slot games. Head to the website today to get in on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. Bet Online, the game starts here. And Bruce, let's start with you giving our listeners a good feel for what we plan on accomplishing here tonight.
Okay. Coming up in a second. Before we do that, I just want to give a shout out to my really good friend, J.A. Adande, who was inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame over the weekend as this year's Kurt Gowdy Media Award winner. When you talk about all those analysts that I was soaking up knowledge from for 30 years, J.A. Adande was one of them. So congratulations, J.A. I'm very proud of you. And I texted him today. He will be joining us on an upcoming show. So we'll tap into some of his knowledge. So J.A. is the best man. Okay, tonight, for sure. Tonight's show, what we wanted to do, because next week, which is the day before the season begins, we wanted to kind of go through next week and give all of our awards and stuff like that. So we thought, well, gee, tonight, let's try and touch all 30 teams with some very, very brief comments, some kind of top line thoughts from each of us. There may be some discussions, or it might just simply be our kind of penny for our thoughts for each team. So, I know, Ross, you have it set up to go in a certain alphabetical order, which, you can explain. But, folks, that's our plan tonight.
Yep, so I sure do. So we're going to start out in the Eastern Conference, but this time we're going to switch it up. We're just going to go alphabetical order. So, Bruce, how about you show us how it's done here with the Atlanta Hawks?
The Hawks still have Trae Young and the number 1 overall pick, Zachary Risacher. DeJounte Murray and Sadiq Bey are gone, and role players like Larry Nance Jr., David Roddy, Cody Zeller, Dyson Daniels are in. If Risacher is a quick learner, there's hope. But this team's probably going to finish below 500, and I think their ceiling is the play-in tournament.
All right, World B.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing for Atlanta is, can their defense improve ever? I mean, they finished bottom 10 in defensive efficiency 6 of the last 7 seasons. They brought in Quinn Snyder. He hasn't done anything to improve. I will say this for Trae Young, because he gets a lot of headaches there. He gets a lot of criticism. I don't know what more he can do. He's one of 3 players to go 25-10 in consecutive seasons. The other guys being Oscar Robertson and Russell Westbrook. There's not much more he can do, to his credit. So I don't see a whole lot more improving on this team, at least this season, until the defense gets better.
Now, last year, the Hawks were on my radar to sneakily win the Southeast Division, and boy, was I wrong with that statement. But heading into the new season, I'm still wondering if this team has a chance to really surprise us all. They should be better without DeJounte Murray, given the chemistry bomb that was with Trae Young. And they've got solid depth, and Quinn Snyder, he hasn't accomplished much there just yet, but he has another season under his belt. He got rid of the point guard problem. And while most NBA GMs are writing off Zachary Risacher for Rookie of the Year chances, according to the latest and greatest GM survey, I'm not quite sure we should be writing off a surprising but productive season in Atlanta. So stay tuned to see what shakes out there. Now, next, Bruce, we've got your Boston Celtics.
No team has repeated as NBA champ since the 2018 Warriors, and I think Boston's going to be the next one to do it. The original NBA culture, known as Celtics pride, has returned big time. This time it's the Joe Mazzulla, Brad Stevens version. There's all-league talent with Tatum and Brown. There's tenacious perimeter D with White and Holiday. When healthy, Kristaps Porzingis, a matchup nightmare and a rim protector. They shoot a lot of threes, but they move the ball beautifully, and most are great looks. The two Jays have chips on their shoulders despite being the champs, and that should scare everyone. They won't win 64 games as they did last season, but 60 plus and a title seems likely to me.
Well, spoiler alert there for next week's show. Bruce has the Celtics winning the title this year. World B?
Yeah, I think they can be a dominant team once again if they wanted. They were the dominant team last season in the NBA. They have like 93% of their regular season minutes returning this season. That's a ridiculous number. So if they want to come back and do this again, dominate again, they were the number one. They were not only number one in offensive efficiency last season, they had the most efficient offensive season in NBA history. And they followed that up by being the number two team in the league in defensive efficiency. So they're the best all-around team in the league. They have all these guys back. You know, a lot of the East is upgraded, and we'll talk about it, but it's still the Celtics if they want it. It seems like that's the way to go. You got to go through them.
Now, has there ever been a team, a reigning NBA champion that is, with more of a chip on their shoulder after just winning the title? I certainly don't believe there is one that comes to mind, at least in recent memory. So if healthy, this team can definitely run it back. But health remains a question mark, as does how much better newly improved teams will stack up against Boston in the Eastern Conference, like Philly, New York, and some would even say Milwaukee. But if they're healthy, I don't see how they're not the favorites next season, just given the summer drama that just went through, the success they had this year, and the consistency this team has shown under the leadership of Joe Mazzulla. So really looking forward to seeing the Celtics this year. They've got a target on their back, Bruce, so that should be fun, as most teams will be gunning to try to take them down. We're going to switch it up here for the next team, and lucky you, the Brooklyn Nets.
Well, as a Knicks fan, I don't ever mind talking about the Brooklyn Nets the way they are. A lot of people I ask, well, what's wrong with the Nets? I said, nothing. I like them this way. Don't change them. There's nothing wrong with them. They're clearly in rebuilding mode. What you're going to get this season is a lot of second-year players like Noah Clowney, Jalen Wilson, Dariq Whitehead, guys like this. You don't know who they are. You're going to see them in the box score if you follow them. They're rookies last year. They expect to see a lot of minutes this season. They're in a rebuilding mode. Cam Thomas, he could average 25 a game for them this year. He averaged, 21, 22 last season? The problem is he's going to take about 20 shots a game to do it. So he's not the most efficient scorer of all time. He's going to dominate the ball, and it's going to be a boring, long season for the Nets. That's just how it is.
Cam Thomas is going to be like a superstar in the 2000s, a la Tracy McGrady on the Magic, putting up 30 shots a game. But at least there's going to be some entertainment there. Bruce?
I expect the Nets to have the NBA's worst record this season. I'm predicting 18-64 and the pole position in the Cooper Flag Sweepstakes. They have 8 first-round picks in the next 2 NBA drafts, 4 next year, 4 the year after. So if they hang on to them, their future could be really, really bright. But their present, not so much.
Yeah. This is the Cam Thomas Show featuring Nick Claxton. Both the regular season win total and TV ratings will be low, but the Nets' chance to be the flag bearer is sky high. All I ask Brooklyn is to allow Cam Thomas to let it fly. I want some epic scoring displays this year from a walking bucket. So we'll keep it moving here with Charlotte Hornets. World B, you're back up.
Yeah, one thing, they could have the league's tallest backcourt with LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller, both about 6'7". I don't know if anybody's going to be taller than that. I predicted them a couple weeks ago that I think this team can make the playoffs. But it's going to be difficult. They were the only team last season in the bottom 5 in offensive and defensive efficiency, so they got to improve somewhere along the lines there to get better. The last season they trailed by double digits in 69 of 82 games. How in the world are you supposed to get? How are you supposed to win games when you do that? And they didn't. They were 6 and 54 in those games. So there's going to be a lot of improvement. But they were really unhealthy last season. If they can stay healthy with a lot of young talent, I think Brandon Miller is a all-star potential player to go along with LaMelo. Maybe not next season, but down the road. They have a shot to make the bottom end of the playoffs.
Bruce?
Charlotte's a team on the rise with new coach Charles Lee and the young core that you mentioned, LaMelo Ball, Brandon Miller, and Miles Bridges. Josh Green comes over from Dallas, and Taj Gibson had some veteran leadership on the practice floor and in the locker room, which they can definitely use. I could see them right there with Miami and Atlanta in the play-in mix.
All right. And for the Charlotte Hornets, this is the first time since their expansion team back in Charlotte as the Bobcats that it certainly appears the Charlotte franchise is finally rebuilding the right way. Smart, strategic, and savvy moves to begin stacking up draft assets and assembling young talent to start shaping a core roster for years to come. That within itself is already a huge win for this team, and we haven't even tipped off the regular season. Dejan Saloon, their first-round pick, is making a little bit of noise here so far in the preseason. He, alongside a year two Brandon Miller, should be a fun development project to monitor this year, of course, with a healthy LaMelo Ball. So next up, we got the Chicago Bulls, Bruce.
Well, not much is expected from the Chicago Bulls, who lost Alex Caruso, DeMar DeRozan, and Andre Drummond. They did add Josh Giddey, Jalen Smith, and Chris Duarte. Zach LaVine, Nick Vucevic, and Patrick Williams, the overpaid Patrick Williams, are still there. They'll probably win just enough games to not totally suck, but nowhere near enough to make any kind of a postseason noise. This team is stuck in mediocrity.
World B.
I got to figure this out here. They weren't a good team last season when they had their best clutch player, DeRozan, and their best defender, Caruso, on the roster. Now they're both gone. So I don't see how they weren't good last year with them on the court. I don't know how they're going to get better with them not around. They had the worst shooting ranking under Billy Donovan last season, 23rd in effective field goal percentage, and they go and ask Josh Giddey, who's a 30% shooter, 31% from threes. I'm with Bruce. There's no reason to think there's any improvement down the road for this team.
Now, as basic and mediocre as this roster is, their top draft pick, Matas Buzelis, has a chance to bring some life to the Bulls fans this season. I'll go as far as to say it's not out of the question Buzelis becomes the first Bulls Rookie of the Year award winner since Derrick Rose. That could be a huge win for Bulls fans in what should be yet another completely average season for the Bulls, but at this point, they'll take something. So maybe it's their having the top rookie in this year's class. Bruce, we've got the Cleveland Cavaliers next.
You know, their roster looks pretty much the same as last year when the Cavs won 48 games. Then they fired head coach J.B. Bickerstaff. Kenny Anderson replaces him and is a pretty talented crew with Jared Allen, Donovan Mitchell, Evan Mobley, Darius Garland. So if everything goes well, they could finish as high as fourth or even fifth. I don't really see that, though. I see them closer to seventh, even though they should duplicate last season's win total of 48.
All right, World B.
Yeah, I think they clearly, the front office says that the whatever problems or whatever, their inability to go further in the playoffs was a result of the coaching staff and not the players, since they go and sign Mitchell to a max extension, Jared Allen to a max extension, Evan Mobley to a max extension. They're throwing all their eggs in their basket of the roster they have. So I think they can still be a player in the East. They had one fewer win than the Bucks last season, don't forget. I mean, it's not like they were a problem. They made the second round, although they just had a putrid offensive performance against the Magic in the first round. Somehow got out of there. I don't think they were the better team in that year, but they advanced. But they have all this talent, we're told. They can't rebound very well on the offensive end. They have to have these guys step up and become players. If they can be a player. They can get back to the fourth spot, say, or the third spot as high if they play the way we think they can play, all those guys together.
Yeah, new coach, same roster. So the way I look at this, the players are out of excuses. It's time to show up and show out. Health will play a big role for this team. And Evan Mobley is also going to be a huge factor for this group. If Mobley can take the next step and become an all-star caliber player out east, the Cavs have a chance to compete with anyone in the conference. If that does not happen, we might see them having the same success as last year and more complaints from the players. Bruce, we've got the Detroit Pistons next.
I'm buying Pistons stock. Cade Cunningham, Jalen Duren, and Jaden Ivey. they're the core guys, the young guys, but Tobias Harris, Paul Reed, Malik Beasley, and Tim Hardaway Jr. bring some veteran savvy, and all of them are used to being on good teams, right? So they expect to win their share of games, and they should be a good influence on those young guys. I think they'll challenge for the play-in tournament, but they're going to fall just short. But even still, a season like that would show great progress for this franchise.
All right. World B?
The biggest thing I want to see out of this team this season is, can they get a healthy Cade Cunningham? I mean, 64 games is his high in over 3 seasons. You got to see more out of him to really, let's see what he's the engine. They signed him to a big deal last season. They're anticipating him being the future. He just can't be healthy enough to stay on the court. As Bruce mentioned, credit to the Pistons. They're going out to get better. You brought in Tobias Harris, Malik Beasley, Tim Hardaway Jr., JB Bickerstaff now their coach. I mean, they're making a conscious effort to try and get better. They don't want to end up, constantly in the lottery picking, even though that may be where they end up. It may not be, because they should be better than they were last season. I don't know if that's play-in worthy or not, but they should have an improved roster. And if I were a Detroit fan, I'd be happy that they're trying to make some improvements.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely feel where you guys are coming from. I was excited about this team last year, but this year I've got to see a little bit more progress before I believe in it. All I learned last year is that this was a young team filled with talent that really didn't know how to mesh and play with one another. I'm staying very disciplined with my excitement, despite being very tempted to cave, having noticed the strong play of Jaden Ivey this preseason. He was a guy I really liked in the draft a couple of years ago. He's shooting the ball well. That's always kind of been his kryptonite. And so maybe they are taking the next step. But, Bruce, I'm selling some stock, so you can buy some if you'd like.
Buy low, sell high.
Yeah, exactly. Indiana Pacers are next, Bruce.
This is going to be Rick Carlisle's 4th season as their head coach. He won 25 in his first year, then 35 in his second year, then 47 in his 3rd year. So he's improved by at least 10 wins in each of his in his 2nd and 3rd seasons after taking over. I don't expect another double-digit increase in wins, but I think 50 is very possible. Tyrese Halliburton, Pascal Siakam, Miles Turner, solid big 3. Benedict Mathurin returns from injury, and I mean, this guy could be a 20-point scorer. He really has that ability. Andrew Nembhard's an emerging talent, and old reliable TJ McConnell comes off the bench and brings fire every night. Obi Toppin, Aaron Nesmith, newly acquired James Wiseman. I mean, there's some depth there as well. So, and Carlisle is as good as any head coach in the NBA. I'm not predicting a conference finals appearance for them, but I am expecting 50 wins and a tough out no matter who they play.
Will be.
I think they have the talent to make it back to a conference finals. They're as Bruce mentioned, that's a load of talent on that roster. Their biggest problem is, and it's really weird with a Rick Carlisle team, their defense is terrible, or it was terrible. I mean, bottom 10 in the league, 24th in defensive efficiency. They were number 2. Only the Celtics were more efficient on offense. That was their bread and butter last season. Can they improve the defense enough to get in the upper half of the league with that offense? Now you can start really, really being a factor in the East. We're going to talk about Philadelphia. New York got a lot of noise in the offseason. And Indiana has a shot at being in that group if they can improve the defense. These other teams are better all around and have a little more talent. If Indiana can't improve the defense, I don't see them going any further than a first round maybe or something like that. If they do improve the defense, yeah, they can get back to the conference finals.
Yeah, I agree with you there, World B. I think all the tools are in the shed, as both of you alluded to there. The depth is tremendous, but can they play team defense? And I'll even take an average level defense, not even top 10. Give me 15th in the league, and I think that would work wonders for their overall record and chance moving into the playoffs. Their offensive rating should be amongst the tops in the league once again this year, given the roster and depth that they have, but the defense must improve in order for them to survive against the top dogs in the Eastern Conference. Bruce, we've got the Miami Heat next.
Miami always ends up being better than you think they're going to be at the beginning of the season. They just do. They have a nice rookie big in Kel'el Ware, and other than losing Caleb Martin, they're back with the same crew. Is Jimmy Butler going to finish the season in Miami? I have my doubts, and I've had my doubts all summer. Bam Adebayo is their rock. He's going to win them a bunch of games, but they have the look of a play-in team, although they could be a dangerous one.
Yep. Will be.
Well, the positives for this team is they have probably the league's best coach in Eric Spoelstra. They're still a great defensive team. They were top 5 last season in defensive efficiency. But their offense was bottom 10, 21st. And you have to have a good offense to really be a factor in this era of the NBA. And, the question Bruce mentioned about Jimmy Butler's future, we got to see him healthy. Nobody's going to take it. You're not going to trade him if he's not healthy. And he hasn't played 70 games in a season since 2016, 2017 with the Bulls. That was 3 teams ago. Wow. So, I mean, you're not going to trade him if he can't get healthy. If he is healthy and on the court, he can help this team get above our expectation for him, which is basically 7th or 8th in the East. But, we doubted this team a couple of years ago, and look what that got us.
Yeah. Well, while Heat culture remains an identity within the Miami franchise, I'm not quite sure we know this team's identity within the Eastern Conference these days. Like most years, the Heat roster is not sexy on paper, but they always find a way to get the most out of their players. Could rookie Kel'el Ware compete for Rookie of the Year consideration? I don't think it's out of the question. I think he could be a guy that certainly locks down a first-team all-rookie this year. It's possible that this team can answer a lot of the questions that we have, but I'm not going to bet on it. Next up, we've got the Milwaukee Bucks, Bruce.
We're still looking at prime Giannis, but 34-year-old Damian Lillard might be running out of time to get his chip. If Chris Middleton misses a lot of time, their glue guy isn't there, and that's a huge problem. Brooke Lopez, Bobby Portis, great role players. New guys like Gary Trent Jr., Taurean Prince will help. But this team's going to rise and fall with their big 2. I mean, they just are. Doc Rivers gets a full season with this group, which is a huge advantage for him over last year when he was hired midseason. But I still got the Bucks getting into the mid-50s for wins.
All right, World B.
Well, their offense is never going to change here. It's still great. They're top 10 in offensive efficiency each of the last 8 seasons, so we can kind of pencil that in. Where did the defense go last season? I mean, I know they got Coach Bud. They let him go, and he's a big defensive guru. We can see the impact. Just look at Atlanta, by the way. He was a top 10 defensive coach. The Hawks were a top 10 defensive team when he was coaching them. He leaves, and you saw you heard my numbers before on them. They've been terrible defensively. The Bucks go to the 19th in defensive efficiency last season. They had a losing record with Doc Rivers. I know we're supposed to – he's a Hall of Fame coach, I'm told, and we're supposed to just bow down to the one title he got for Bruce's Celtics back in 2008. But the fact is they were sub 500, and they let a guy who had a winning record go. Actually, they did twice. Joe Prunty went 2-1 with them, so I missed that here. It's all about them in defense. If they can improve the defense, I think they are the top candidate in the East to have a major bounce back season and be one of the top 4 teams, maybe one of the top 3 teams back in the East. But if the defense doesn't improve, no, they're just mid-40s.
I would agree with you, World B. Even for the biggest Bucks fans and insiders, it's really hard to get a read at where this team is at to start this season. The team absolutely has to prove it this year. No more love is being given for past accomplishments, big-name stars that were acquired, or even big-time and big-name coaching changes. So it's put up or shut up time in Milwaukee. The one thing that I have hope with the defensive end is the fact they did make some improvements with that this summer, addressing that. Gary Trent Jr. is one of the league leaders in steals almost every year, and Taurean Prince is about as sound a defender as they come as a veteran wing. So hopefully those two can play a big factor for this team defensively, and then they also need, of course, a healthy Chris Middleton, which really shaky at this time. So hopefully he can get back up on his feet and help this group compete in the Eastern Conference. World B, we've got your Knicks next.
Well, they were one of the few teams last season, well, I think there were only 5 or 6, that was top 10 in offensive and defensive efficiency. It's that being that all-around team that makes you a threat in this league, and they were one of the best at it. We saw the exciting run they had during the postseason. Their off-season additions, they pick up Mikal Bridges. Lately, the last few weeks, they picked up Karl Anthony Towns. They have one of the glamour lineups in the league, if you will, and they still have some depth out there. But this is a team that hasn't made it past the second round in almost a quarter of a century. So I know there's a lot of hype with this team, probably more than they've had in at least a dozen years. But we got to really see it from this team. They have the lineup. They have the potential to really be the Celtics' main challenger in the East, maybe in the NBA. But I'll take a wait and see approach once playoffs start if they can get it to at least the conference finals.
Bruce?
Knicks fans like World B are feeling themselves right now, and why not? I mean, they should be. Two of the most significant offseason moves, as you mentioned, pulled off by Leon Rose, were Mikal Bridges and Karl Anthony Towns joining Jalen Brunson, Josh Hart, OG Anunoby. Killer starting five. I mean, could be championship caliber for sure. They did lose a little bit of depth with Dante DiVincenzo, who did a little bit of woofing at the Knicks bench over the weekend, which was kind of fun to see. And Isaiah Hartenstein, who was a excellent stopgap big for them when Mitchell Robinson got hurt. Those guys are gone. But if and when Mitchell Robinson returns from injury, he solidifies their rebounding and their rim protection, and the Knicks are going to be right there, right at or near the top of the East.
Yeah, they're going to be fun to watch. I've got them having a big year. They've got big moves, big expectations. Anything less than the return trip to the Eastern Conference Finals is, of course, a big disappointment. A big factor into whether or not the Knicks meet expectations this year will be Karl Anthony Towns, obviously the crown jewel they traded for here late into the offseason, coming over from Minnesota, and having Karl Towns step into the center position on the biggest and brightest stage in New York should be fun to watch. Towns must step up to the challenge and evolve from a kitty cat in Minnesota into a bobcat in New York. Ooh. And maybe with that, they can finish a team off like Boston. But, of course, they did lose a finisher at the rim in Dante DiVincenzo, and he certainly let Coach Thibs know that, he's a finisher. So we'll see if they can handle losing Dante DiVincenzo and Julius Randle. All right, we'll be your backup here. We've got your Orlando Magic.
One more comment about Dante DiVincenzo before we
Okay.
All I'm going to say is this is his fifth team in the last 4 seasons. It's not all because he has a team-friendly contract. Enough said right there, okay? You draw your own conclusions. There's something to be said for 5 teams in 4 years. That's it.
All right, how about the Magic?
On to Orlando. Awesome season last season. They only had 3 fewer wins than the Knicks, by the way. 47 wins. They pushed the Cavs to 7 games in the first round. They had a huge first half lead against them. We thought they were going to advance and kind of bottomed out in the second half. Big question. They went and got Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. Huge pickup for them. He should help them. Hopefully he'll help them offensively because that's a big question. They've been bottom 10 in offensive efficiency for 12 straight seasons. That's unbelievable. That's really hard to do. That's not an organization. That's not a coaching thing. That's not a personnel thing because that's 12 straight years. Something's got to change with that. They have a lot of young talent. They should get better. They had one of the best defensive teams in the league last season. I don't expect that to change any. Only Minnesota and Boston, 2 of the league's best teams last season, were better, more efficient on defense than the Magic. So if they can improve the offense, as Ross talked about with the Pacers defensively, getting into just the middle of the back. If the Magic can do that and get just out of the bottom 10 offensively, they got a real chance to make it past this first round, get into the second round, and create a lot of excitement here in Orlando.
Bruce?
I mean, the Magic are a solid playoff team. I mean, Paolo Banchero, Franz Wagner, and newly acquired KCP, as you mentioned. This crew's going to approach 50 wins, and if some of their young guys like Jalen Suggs, Wendell Carter, and Anthony Black step up, they could be a really dangerous playoff opponent for the top teams like the Knicks and Sixers and Celtics and Bucks.
I agree, Bruce. And out of all the teams in the East, I think the Magic are in the best position heading into the season. Why? Well, once again, nobody's really talking about them. they've been staying under the radar, and it just might be the best position to be in the Eastern Conference right now. All the hoopla is focused on New York, the big PG signing in Philadelphia, Embiid, the Celtics offseason drama, reigning champions going into the year. And here's Orlando just keeping on, maintaining the same consistent young talent that continues to improve, all while just tweaking their roster just a bit with adding KCP, who should work wonders offensively for this team and just leadership within the locker room. So in the grand scheme of NBA headlines, this, is a team that continues to fly under the radar, but like none of us is going to be surprised if they were to knock off one of the top dogs in the East. So I think Orlando likes where they're at and is in a good spot to succeed this year. And with that, let's get to one of the top dogs in the East, Bruce, and that is the Philadelphia 76ers.
What I'm about to discuss with this team is a lot different than what I was planning to discuss when I woke up on Monday morning. Joel Embiid has announced he will no longer play back-to-back games. This season, the Sixers have 14 back-to-backs, okay? If he skips a game in all of them, all right, he can only miss 3 more games and still remain eligible for all NBA and postseason awards. In 7 or 8 of the back-to-backs, there's an obvious choice as to which game he should skip. There's a crappy team, there's a good team. He'll set out against the crappy team. However, in 6 of them, there are significant matchups in both cases, in both games. For instance, November 12th and 13th, Knicks or Cleveland. Who are you going to sit out against? January 14th and 15th, OKC or the Knicks. January 18th or 19th, the Pacers or the Bucks. January 28th or 29th, the Lakers or the Kings, both on the West Coast. February 4th and 5th, Dallas or Miami. I mean, the Sixers have 4 back-to-backs in March alone. As last week, PJ Carlissimo said, he wants those guys to ramp up their minutes for the playoffs, not back off. So if he's going to sit out half of 4 back-to-backs in March, I mean, one of those choices is Dallas or Houston. So I just think that this has the potential to either change because they realize what he's saying is just really detrimental, or B, Paul George, is this what you signed up for?
I mean, at least Paul George is used to it, right, World B? I mean, he's ready for this moment.
Yeah, he had all those years with Kawhi, so he's been well prepped for this kind of season that's upcoming. I mean, the facts are, it's really simple. If they're all healthy, that's a potent lineup that could challenge the Celtics, can challenge the Knicks, and just what we talked about. There's going to be a 3-team race, we all assume, for the East, or at least a 2-team battle to try and unseat the Celtics. It's a matter of health. And the fact remains, just like with the Knicks, Sixers haven't made the conference finals since 2001. There's a lot of hype surrounding this team, just like surrounding the Knicks. But you know what? We got to take a wait-and-see approach before we just anoint them as the team in the East. And let's see them get past somebody in the second round to get to the conference finals before we crown them. Same thing with the Knicks too.
Yeah, fair point there. And even with Paul George aboard and Tyrese Maxey's emergence as an all-star guard, the overall season continues to rely on Joel Embiid. And what Bruce pointed out there does not, make me feel any better about this group moving forward. The Sixers can get Embiid all the help in the world, but can Embiid be able to keep himself healthy and help his team? That's the biggest question. And sitting out back-to-backs, or at least saying you are at the beginning of the season, not knowing how it's going to go, it is not something that sits well with me if I'm a Philly fan. So that will forever remain the biggest question mark with the Philadelphia 76ers with Joel Embiid on board. And that's what they've signed up with for another 4 or 5 years with that contract extension. So when healthy and if healthy, the sky's the limit for the Sixers. But as we know, that always comes with an asterisk. Next up, we've got the Toronto Raptors. Bruce?
Wasn't that long ago that the Raptors had 5 straight 50-win seasons and an NBA championship in 2019. And while many of the members of that 2019 Raptors team are still in the league, none of them are in Toronto. Okay. This team is in rebuild mode around Scotty Barnes, RJ Barrett, and Emmanuel Quickley. I think it's going to be a long winter in Toronto, but others see more potential with this team. But I think they're going to struggle to avoid a 60-loss season.
All right. Will be?
Well, they were bottom 10 last season in both offensive and defensive efficiency. That's not a good way to build. At least you have somewhere to improve, something to work on. They went, after they made the trade for R.J. Barrett and Emmanuel Quickly, they went 13-37. So it's not like they improved in that area. They have a great inside game. They were number one in percentage of their field goal attempts that came from in the paint. But they were a terrible perimeter shooting team, 27th in three-point percentage. If they can't improve that, they can't improve with the guard play, it's going to be a long season in Toronto.
Well, let me preface my comments here on the Raptors because I know and can admit I'm an NBA sicko. I like to watch development sometimes more than I like to watch good teams. And the Toronto Raptors next season is my favorite League Pass team in the East. And I need to enjoy watching a full year of Emmanuel Quickly as a starting point guard. I find that a very interesting storyline. I want to see RJ Barrett continue to blossom with a fresh start back home in Toronto. And I'm very curious to see if Scotty Barnes is who the Raptors thinks he is by handing him a max contract this summer. I don't think it's all going to pan out, but I'll certainly be one aboard to watch it all unfold. Bruce, let's get to the Wizards.
Here's tonight's fun fact. The Wizards haven't had a 50-win season since, wait for it, the 1978-79 season, when Wes Unseld and Elvin Hayes led the Bullets to the NBA Finals the year after they had actually won. Hey, any team can have a bad half century, right? Their big offseason moves were bringing in veterans like Jonas Valanciunas, Malcolm Brogdon, and Sadiq Bey, and hopefully those vets can help teach their kids like Bud Carrington, Bilal Coulibaly, and number 2 overall pick Alex Sarr. I make very few guarantees, but I guarantee they won't win 50 for the 46th straight season.
Sounds like a safe bet there, Bruce. Nice job. World B.
Yeah, I think you're looking at the team, the worst record in the league this season there in Washington.
Over the Nets.
Yes, I think they're going to be worse than the Nets. They have more talent, but they have, they still have Jordan Poole at last check. And while he did play better after the All-Star break, I think he was like 21 a game after the All-Star break. He got off to a horrendous start. He's still, number one knucklehead in the league. I guess you can say it. Only the Wizards and the Pistons have been in the bottom 10 in both offensive and defensive efficiency each of the last 3 seasons. So they're not getting any better. They brought in some people, not enough to get better.
Yeah. Well, here's the positives. They traded for my favorite draft prospect on draft night in Bub Carrington. They got Alex Sarr with one of the top picks in the draft who could help them defensively. They have Kyle Kuzma and Jonas Valanciunas, both of which should be interesting names at this year's trade deadline. Bilal Coulibaly is headed into year 2 and is coming off an Olympic run with France, so hopefully he got some valuable experience there. And they'll be in the running for Cooper Flag. And those are my positives, and we'll end on a high note as we take a break here and come back with you for this second half. And we're back here, so let's go ahead and head on over to the Western Conference. We're going to start off with the Dallas Mavericks, which happen to be the first in alphabetical order here in the Ds, surprisingly enough. So, Bruce, start us off with the Mavs.
So the Mavs added Klay Thompson to Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic, and Jason Kidd's going to really need to tinker with his rotations if those 3 are going to be on the court together, because they may not have enough defense, especially with Derrick Jones Jr. gone. Derek Lively looks like a young, a star in the making, but he's just 20 years old. PJ Washington, solid at the 4, but I really felt these guys overachieved last year when they made it to the finals, and I certainly don't expect to see them in the NBA Finals again.
World B?
While I wouldn't necessarily expect them to be in the NBA Finals, they're not my pick to come out of the West. We got to remember, after they picked up Gafford and PJ Washington, they went 21-7 until the last 2 games of the season. They kind of, they had everything, they punted. They didn't play anybody, whatever. So that was the second best record in the league over that stretch after they were top 6 in offensive and defensive efficiency over that stretch. So this wasn't necessarily a fluke. We didn't see it coming because we didn't pay attention, and that's on us, I guess, a little bit. I don't expect them to get back to the finals. I do expect them to be another player, a major player in the Western Conference, though.
Yep. And Bruce, my thoughts align with yours here. More offense, but less defense. Klay Thompson certainly fit a need with the shooting, but I'm curious where this team defense stacks up next season. Fortunately for Dallas, being among the league leaders in points scored can win you a lot of games. Luka's going to help them excel there. But would I bet against them returning to the NBA Finals? I think I definitely would, as currently constructed. Maybe the defensive needs can be addressed at the trade deadline, but last I checked, they're kind of running out of options with their own cabinet of draft assets. So it's a wait and see approach with Dallas for me. All right, we got the Denver Nuggets next.
They're consistent, one of the most consistent teams in the league year after year. Last season, 1 of 4 teams are ranking the top 10 in offensive and defensive efficiency. So, the biggest question we have with Denver right now is, will the chemistry still be there after Kentavious Caldwell-Pope left? They have their key was their starting lineup. They played more minutes at starting lineup than anybody in any other lineup in the league last season, and they dominated offensively, like 125 points per 100 possessions when they were all on the court, that lineup. So, the big question with them outside of chemistry is, can they get the job done when Joker's off the court? When he was on the court, they outscored opponents by almost 12 points per 100 possessions. When he was off the court, they got outscored by almost 9 points per 100 possessions. That's a huge swing. It doesn't seem to matter. They won a title with basically the same kind of difference, but they're starting to lose players a little bit at a time, and eventually that's going to chip away. They should be a major contender in the West. They're not my pick to make it out of the West, however.
All right, Bruce.
As long as the Joker has a pulse, you can basically pencil Denver in for 50 wins, but they really don't look like the team that won a chip a couple years ago. I mean, Jamal Murray, Aaron Gordon, Michael Porter Jr., they're all still there, but as World B mentioned, KCP is gone, and Russell Westbrook is in. I mean, they're going to need solid minutes from Dario Saric, but the team looked pretty average in the Dubai games against the Celtics. I never underestimate the heart of a champion. Thanks to Rudy T for that immortal line. So Denver is still dangerous, but I think their ceiling is number 3 out west.
Yeah, I mean, anything's possible when you have the Joker on your team. He is just that good. But at some point, their young rotational pieces need to be ready to contribute at a higher level. I think that the point is right now, considering how strong the West is this season, Christian Braun, Julian Strother, Peyton Watson, I've got my eyes on you because you're going to have to help the Joker propel this team, in addition to the health of Michael Porter Jr. and Jamal Murray. So a lot more ifs with this team than we've ever seen before, especially with the dismissal or subtraction of KCP out west. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there. But the Denver Nuggets will still be solid with the Joker. Bruce, we've got the Warriors up next.
So now that Klay Thompson is gone, Steph Curry and Draymond Green are the OGs, along with Andrew Wiggins, who's more of a YG. But anyway, it seems like Jonathan Kuminga has been there forever, and he's 22 years old. So, friend of the show, Brandon Pajemski, could have a breakout year, but the conference is so tough. I mean, if newcomers like Buddy Hield and Kyle Anderson can fit in, the Dubs may surprise people, but I'm not feeling them at all this year.
All right, Bruce. All right, Will-B, how you feeling?
Well, one of the weird things about the Warriors last season, they had a better record and a better offense than they had the previous season, and they missed the playoffs. So that's how tough the West is, as Bruce mentioned, whatever. The biggest thing for them is they couldn't beat the good teams last season. Against teams that had a winning record, they were 19-31. They went 27-5 against teams that were at or below 500. So they dominated against teams they're supposed to beat. If they can improve on the teams they have to beat, I think they got one more stand in them, one more good push in them. How far that goes in the playoffs, who knows? Maybe a conference semifinal, maybe like we saw with the Lakers 2 seasons ago, make the conference finals again. I wouldn't necessarily put it on them, but I think Steph has one more good run in him.
Yeah, I'm starting to drink that Kool-Aid, World B. Should we pump the brakes on the idea of regression? I understand it's only preseason, but the early looks at the Dubs additions of DeAnthony Melton and Buddy Hield look very promising. Kyle Anderson's going to be a good fit there as well. And as I stated earlier in the offseason, losing Clay could be addition by subtraction, as Clay's departure was a turn of the page for this franchise, and it certainly was time to shake things up from the old dynasty crew. So maybe this was a blessing in disguise, and Curry's got one last run with him before hanging it up. Bruce, the Houston Rockets.
I love the mix of veterans like Fred VanVleet and Steven Adams, just acquired, with a young core of Alpi Şengün, Jalen Green, rookie Reed Shepherd, and Dylan Brooks. Ime Udoka will blend the pieces well, and the Rockets are just about ready for takeoff. Not really sure what their ceiling is, but I got them finishing above 500.
All right, World B.
Well, we're talking about the team that improved the most defensively last season. They went from 29th in 22-23 to 10th last season. So they immediately had the impact that we expect from Coach Udoka there. And they returned almost the entire roster. 97% of their minutes from last season are back for this season. So that's a huge thing for them in terms of continuity, getting back to being a factor in this conference. And their offense, one of the big reasons why you have to like the Rockets, along with their improvement on defense, they were 23rd in offensive efficiency at the All-Star break. They were 15th after the break. Not a tremendous improvement, but a lot of the league, the offense went down after the break. They got better. So there's reason to be optimistic about the Rockets making that next step, maybe making the playoffs. I don't know, but there definitely should be continuing their improvement.
Now, Bruce, I use the same catchphrase, just in a little different fashion. I think Houston is ready for liftoff. If there's one team out west that's really going to improve this season, this would be the team I would pick. I've got huge expectations for year 3, Jalen Green. Another step in the right direction for Jamari Smith Jr. Alperen Sengun and both Amin Thompson and Cam Whitmore have another year of experience now under their belts. And, did I mention that the Rockets also drafted the favorite per the GM survey to win Rookie of the Year in Reed Shepherd. So Reed Shepherd's stock is sky high right now. And given how much young talent Ime Udoka has on this roster, it's going to be very interesting to see how the rotation shakes out. But it's a very good problem to have in the Western Conference as injuries do occur and trades can be made. And I don't think the Rockets are done dealing yet this year. I think they've got the capabilities of being very aggressive on the trade market and at the trade deadline. So a lot could be in store for Houston. Now, next up, we've got the Los Angeles Clippers. Bruce?
Ty Lue's going to have to do his greatest coaching job for this team to make the playoffs. Kawhi Leonard's health, James Harden's age, those are the two big question marks. Derek Jones Jr. is going to help him out with some good D, and Ivica Zubac's serviceable at the 5. Norman Powell can get you some buckets, but the rest of this team looks pretty thin. Kevin Porter Jr. may have a chance to resurrect his career and his reputation. We'll see about that, but this team is riddled with question marks.
Yeah, lots of questions. World B?
Well, they were the number 4 offense last season in terms of efficiency, but now they don't have Paul George anymore. Or Kawhi Leonard's not healthy, so you got to expect that to go down. They were 16th in defensive efficiency last season, surprising when you had guys like Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. But Paul George is gone. Kawhi Leonard's not healthy. Can't see that improving. So I don't know where this team's going to come up with enough wins to be a factor and make the playoffs in a tough other teams have improved, and they just haven't, period.
Yeah. Well, this team is not close to being my favorite League Pass watch in the West next season, but they are contenders to become my favorite team to follow on Twitter. We've got a cast of characters in this bunch with their own owner, Steve Ballmer, James Harden, Kawhi Leonard status updates, Bones Highland, Kai Jones, and Kevin Porter Jr. highlights. Maybe a nice dunk or two from Derek Jones Jr., and of course, they'll have all their new arena content. So lots going on Twitter. I don't know about on the court, but I'll be very entertained with what we see on social media. But I don't hold much hope for their playoff chances, but I've got high hopes for nightly entertainment from the Clippers. Next up, we're going to go to the team down the street there, Bruce, the Los Angeles Lakers.
Dalton Connect looks like a rookie who can shoot threes, and he could be a big key for this team. Anthony Davis, if healthy, and LeBron James set the bar high, but the supporting cast needs to deliver. JJ Redick has LeBron in his corner, so his seat will not get that hot if the Lakers take time to gel. And I'm not mentioning Bronny James.
Okay. World B, are you going to mention Bronny James?
No, well, you guys have mentioned him twice. It's for a guy who's not supposed to get mentioned, he's pretty prominent on our show today. That's 2 more times than Jalen Brunson, by the way, that we've talked about. Just so you know.
Yikes.
I said his name.
I
said it, in
there's a
passing.
lot. All right. There's a lot of positives about this team, despite all the turmoil. Was that a better way to put it? The drama surrounding this team. They were one of the top teams that scored in the restricted area. Outscored opponents by almost over 6 a game, and they were almost 5 points better than their opponents at the free throw line. So that is a positive thing now. That's how you get efficiency. You score at the free throw line, you hit threes. They were a better 3-point shooting team than people realize. Their best shooters are the most prolific shooters from 3-point range, shot the ball well, including LeBron James. So there are positives about that. One of the things is, as Bruce mentioned, Anthony Davis played a lot of minutes with LeBron James last season, over 1,700 minutes together. It's the most in the 5 seasons they've been together. We're going to need that, or the Lakers are going to need that for them to be a factor again. Are we expecting that with their track record? LeBron's another year older, and AD is another year away from being less healthy than we expect. So that's the problem we want to see. If those two can be healthy and on the court and whatever, they got a chance to be even better than last season.
Yeah. Speaking of media darlings, as I did with the Clippers, let's not forget about the Lakers here. Unlike the Clippers, though, I'll find myself wanting to watch more Laker games because, for one, none of us should take LeBron James for granted, because even if he annoys you, we will undoubtedly miss him and his talent when it's gone. We must appreciate his greatness, hate him or love him. And secondly, it's also worth monitoring JJ Redick as a rookie coach. And Anthony Davis' health always is a big concern and thing to monitor. We say it every year, but LeBron James' window of being a top player in this league is closing. Can the pieces that surround LeBron be consistent enough to give King James a legit shot at another playoff or play-in appearance? On paper, if everything goes as planned, they do, but they need a lot of things to go their way, which starts with the health of Anthony Davis. Now, next up, we've got the Memphis Grizzlies. World B, I'll let you go first on this one.
Well, for them, can they be healthy? John Moran, he had his suspension last season, then he got hurt and missed most of the season. One of my favorite stats from last season, I mentioned it a couple of weeks ago, their most used 5-player lineup last season played 68 minutes together. That's it.
Wow.
I mean, they were a train wreck with injuries and whatever. So if they can and now the problem for me, the reason I'm not sold on them is if you get everybody healthy, you have a lineup of John Moran, Desmond Bane, who I think could be an all-star, Marcus Smart, Jaren Jackson Jr. Those 4 players, when they were on the court last season, the Memphis Grizzlies got outscored by almost 3 points per 100 possessions. That's not how it's supposed to work. I know it's a small sample because of injuries or whatever, but that's your core guys, and you're getting outscored. So I'm not saying it's going to happen again, but I definitely need to see something from them before I can really say they're back to where they were a couple seasons ago.
Right. Bruce?
Zach Edey's had some really good preseason minutes, and he's going to be one of the favorites for the Rookie of the Year. John Morant is back, and Triple J, Jaren Jackson Jr., has incredible upside. He's still just 25 years old. Celtics fans like me want Marcus Smart to play some meaningful games after suffering through injuries last season. And I think an under-the-radar storyline there could be Scottie Pippen Jr. Can he get enough minutes to break out? I mean, in the preseason he has. I don't know if that changes once the real games begin, though.
Yeah, it should be fun to watch there. As for me, if any team can be referred to as the redeemed team in the NBA this season, it's the Memphis Grizzlies, who basically lost an entire season of play last year due to misfortunate injuries to damn near the whole team, plus unfortunate injuries and other circumstances. When all are healthy and eligible to play, this team compete with anyone on a nightly basis. But there were a few weeks into the preseason, and Jaren Jackson is already dealing with a hamstring issue that could be reoccurring throughout the year. So we'll have to keep an eye out for that. And as much as I like the makeup of this team, I've got to wait and see approach with them as well on their overall upside, But one thing is for certain, the competition out west is just so much better with grit and grind involved. So I'm hoping to see them in the playoff mix because they're always a fun team historically to watch in the playoffs. Now, Bruce, I'm going to let you take the Minnesota Timberwolves first, and then we'll hear from World B with Donte DiVincenzo.
I'm shocked that you didn't mention Gigi Jackson when you were talking about.
He's hurt too. So I just don't want to. I wanted to stick with positives. Well,
you can't have grit and grind without GG. So
nice.
Just saying. All right.
Like that.
So anyway, Timberwolves are going to battle OKC for the top spot in the West. It's going to be neck and neck the whole season. Karl Anthony Towns gone. Julius Randle, Donte DiVincenzo come over. Anthony Edwards, obviously elite. Naz Reid, as I've said before, is a nuclear weapon off the bench. And Mike Conley's a maestro at the point. Rudy Gobert anchors the best defense in the conference. Rookie Rob Dillingham will practice against Conley every day, and that should really help his growth immeasurably. So I'm feeling Minnesota and OKC neck and neck for the top of the West. I don't know. I think Minnesota might be just this much behind them, though.
Yeah, that's going to be a fun neck and neck race there. World B?
Well, to Bruce's point, they weren't just the number one defensive team in the conference last season. They were the number one defense in the league by a wide margin, too. They dominated the league defensively, and that's what got them so improved from that first season with Rudy Gobert. That was such a disappointment, we remember. Yeah, I think they were my pick a few weeks ago to represent the West, come out of the West, and play for the NBA championship. Then they go and make the trade, get rid of Cat, and bring in Julius Randle and DiVincenzo. And my pick is still the Minnesota Timberwolves out of the West. Yeah. I think it's all going to ride on Anthony Edwards, who is so far this offseason has been very vocal on social media, shooting his mouth off about a lot of things to the NBA and how it used to be. But here's something he's not shooting his mouth off about. He shot 30% from three-point range after the All-Star break last season. He's got to get better. He has to be that next superstar. We saw Luka start to become that super-duper star, the face of the NBA last season as he took the Mavericks to the finals. If Anthony Edwards can do that, and he's progressing that way, getting better year after year overall, if he can do that, that's going to be, with their defense, they're going to make it to the finals.
Yep. Will be just a suggestion here. You might need to chime back at one of his recent posts and say, this is one thing you're not talking about, and try to help him out with those 3-point percentage.
No, I'll take a wait and see approach just like everybody else. Let's see him. He's very vocal. Let's see him do it.
All right. Well, one of the best basketball minds on the planet in PJ Carlissimo said it right here on 48 Minutes just a week ago, and it's aged exceptionally well so far. The Cat trade really seems to be a good one for Minnesota, and we haven't even seen Julius Randle suit up yet. Donte DiVincenzo is getting rave reviews from his teammates, and he's stringing together one hell of a start in Minnesota with his preseason play. Add in the impressive play of Rob Dillingham in the preseason thus far, and man, this T-Wolves team really has something special brewing. So, like you said, Bruce, I see them being neck and neck with Oklahoma City Thunder. All bets are off who wins that race. I think it's going to be that tight. It's going to be a photo finish. Next up, we got the New Orleans Pelicans. World B, start us off.
Well, they were an under the radar team last season. It was all about Zion. We heard all this stuff, and the fact of the matter is they were really close to being one of those teams that was top 10 in both offensive and defensive efficiency. They were 6th on defense, and they were just 11th on offense, just outside there. When their offense was going, when they had an efficiency where they scored 105 points per 100 possessions last season, they were 47-22, 25 games over 500. That's elite level of performance when you have your offense going. And the biggest question with them, we're trying to figure out who was going to be in the middle. Can they actually get away with putting Zion in the middle and really creating a lineup mess for opponents to try and defend them? They're one of those teams. I think they can. I said in our couple weeks ago on our podcast, I think my prediction is they're going to host a first-round series.
All right. Bruce?
I think this could be a tough year down in New Orleans. Zion Williamson, well, he's talented but injury-prone. DeJounte Murray, joins the team, provides some punch, but they're very thin at center. I mean, they lost Jonas Valanciunas and Cody Zeller. Their starting center looks like it's going to probably be 6'8" Daniel Tice. Nice player, not your starting center if you're a good team. Is Brandon Ingram going to be a happy camper? There was all kinds of rumors about them wanting to move him, but he's still there. Herb Jones and C.J. McCollum are still there, but C.J.'s now 33 years old, and his scoring average has dropped the past 2 seasons. So I'm not expecting this to be a good season down in New Orleans.
Yeah, I'm so stuck on this team. I trust Zion, and I don't trust Zion. I'm sorry. Let me clear that up. And to make matters worse, I now don't know how I feel about their big offseason splash of bringing together DeJounte Murray and C.J. McCollum in the backcourt. So despite my feelings, though, I feel like New Orleans always finds a way to be solid and a very tough out on any given night and come playoff time. So I would expect the same to happen because I always seem to be wrong on this team, and we'll just have to see. I think one of the biggest things with Zion is, are they going to roll out point guard Zion and play CJ and DeJounte Murray off the ball? Because that seemed to work last year, but then they bring in Murray, and that kind of causes some confusion. So I'm always confused with this team, but they seem to know what they're doing to a certain extent out west. Up next, Bruce, we got the OKC Thunder.
I mean, it's hard to see anyone other than the Thunder or Minnesota winning the West. I mean, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander does a little bit of everything for OKC, and Chet Holmgren was the best rookie not named Victor Wembanyama last season. Holmgren's going to get some help on the boards from Isaiah Hartenstein, who joined the team as a free agent, as we said earlier. Another newcomer, Alex Caruso, a championship experience and a premier perimeter defender. And I haven't even mentioned Jalen Williams, who could be a 20-point scorer this season. Things look A-OK in OKC.
Very nicely done. Will be.
Well, yeah, they're the team, the glamour team in the West. Obviously, won 57 games last season. You know, they won 57 games last season and got a third of their minutes from rookies or second-year players. That's
Wow, didn't know that.
I mean, that's incredible to be that good, getting a lot of your minutes from such young players. So you figure they can only get better. The problem is it's so difficult in the West. It doesn't take much to drop from first to third, first to fourth, second to fifth. You know, it's so tight. We saw the Lakers last season had a better record than the previous season. They made the conference finals 2 seasons ago. So it's really that difficult. There's nothing wrong with picking OKC to come out of the West. They're the proper pick, I suppose. I just have Minnesota, but certainly is no outlandish thing to go with the Thunder. They're primed to be that team, not just this season, but for many seasons.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And despite how deep the West is, given their offseason acquisitions, being a very young but talented core, much like the Knicks in the East, anything less than a return to the Western Conference Finals seems like a disappointment with this team. So a lot of the same vibes from the Knicks camp, it seems like with the Thunder, despite the age gap there and differences there. They've got a legit MVP candidate in SGA. They've only further straightened their roster around SGA, and they gained some invaluable playoff experience during their deep run last year. And I'm a huge believer that you kind of have to take a tough loss in the playoffs, kind of make a deep run, but then kind of have to lick your wounds a little bit before you're really ready to compete for a title and be taken very seriously. They're at that point now, so I'm definitely taking them seriously next season. Bruce, next up, we've got the Phoenix Suns.
You know, health is a key for this veteran crew. No surprises there. KD begins his 18th NBA season. And much like LeBron James, he's still really close to peak KD. Last year, he averaged 27 points, which is his career average. You know, Devin Booker begins his 10th season at age 28, and he is truly in his prime right now. This is prime Book. And they finally have a solid point guard in Tyus Jones to go with KD, Book, and Bradley Beal, who begins his 13th year. But he can't miss 29 games like he did last season. He's got to be healthy. This team's got a lot to prove, and I think they're going to have a really good season. I think they'll reach 50 wins, and, you know, they're a team that in the postseason, you're not going to want to play them if they're healthy.
Yeah. Will B, what's your take?
Well, considering that Minnesota swept them last season, I'm sure Minnesota wouldn't mind playing them again in the playoffs. So, but to Bruce's point, you know, they only got 41 games with KD, Booker, and Beal in the lineup together. Now, when they were in the lineup together, they dominated. They were 26-15, 11 games over 500. You average that out, that's 52 wins. That's over a whole season. That's pretty darn good. And they went, after the break last season, they were 38-15 or 35-18. So, I mean, they really know what they're doing here. After December, not after the All-Star break, after late December. I'm sorry about that. But can they solve their fourth quarter issues? They were outscored by almost 12 points per 100 possessions in the fourth quarter last season. Easily the worst net efficiency in the NBA. That's unbelievable to fathom, given the veteran leadership that they have and a closer like KD. If they can solve that, I think they can be a 50-win team as well. They just have to get healthy. And I think the fourth quarter issues were a fluke, but they're still issues. And I think if they can solve them, they're a 50-win team.
Well, I think they worked on trying to solve them, because when I think of fourth quarter issues, I think about a team that's not organized or poised or, being properly set up with the spacing. They've solved that with getting a point guard. That was one of my biggest questions and criticisms last year, is this team does not have a point guard. Devin Booker's capable. He's talented enough to run point, but I don't know if it's the best look. This year, they got a quality point guard in Tyus Jones, who I think is going to play a major factor for this team. And I think we will see those fourth quarter results improve, as well as the record. And I see them exceeding much more in this year's playoff. Definitely not getting swept next year in the playoffs so early. So keep an eye on the Phoenix Suns, because they could really surprise some people. Bruce, we've got the Portland Trailblazers up next.
Your guy, Scoot Henderson, had a couple of nice buckets against the Clippers in his first preseason game, but he shot just 4 of 16 with 7 turnovers. He was better on Sunday against Sacramento with 7 assists and just 1 turnover. His growth is going to go a long way towards determining how well this team does. 7'2" rookie Donovan Clingan and 6'11" DeAndre Ayton are going to practice together, and that should help Clingan's development. But Jeremy Grant. Is Jeremy Grant going to be traded before the deadline? He's the only player on their roster as old as 30 years old on the entire roster, which is probably unprecedented, at least this season. And he makes almost $30 million this season and is under contract for, count them, 3 more years after that for more than $100 million. So you might be thinking, gee, his agent must be the MVP. His agent? Rich Paul of Clutch Sports.
Nice. Well done there. World B?
Well, it's no surprise anybody watched them last season how young they were. They had the highest percentage of minutes played by rookies or second-year players, 53% of their minutes. Consequently, they had the worst offense in the NBA. They were 29th in efficiency, and they were the worst shooting team in the league, last in effective field goal percentage. That comes with playing younger guys. So we're going to see some growth out of these guys. We're going to see these young guys try to improve. They were a 500 team last season for all of 6 games. Nice. And then after 3-3, they went 40 games under 500 the rest of the year, 18-58. So they did have hope until probably the end of October, and reality set in. So it's going to be another struggle for them. They're not built for now. They're not built. Maybe they're not built for next season, but hopefully for Portland fans, you'll see some hope, some signs of improvement from the young guys.
No doubt about that. And since I am a huge fan of Scoot Henderson, I love nothing more than monitoring his development, I'm expecting a big growth year for him. Hopefully in year 2, the game starts to slow down a little bit more mentally. Turnovers were a problem this year or last year. Early this preseason, the game you were alluding to, Bruce, he had 7 turnovers. So that certainly can happen, and the shooting's got to get better. But this team's going to compete at all offensively. They need to keep Anthony Simons healthy. He dealt with some health struggles last year. He is one of the better shooters in the league, if you ask me. And I think if he got more exposure on anywhere other than Portland, more people would agree with that. And the other thing that they need to do with this development program is get Shaedon Sharpe healthy. He is now hurt once again. He could have been a guy that potentially could put up numbers where he'd at least be considered as an option on the 6th Man of the Year ballot, as he seems to be coming off the bench with Denny Advia now in town, who should also give this team a boost. But Yeah, it's more development for this team. I don't expect them to be in a lot of games, but hope to see some flashes for a lot of these younger players that are competing at a high level for Coach Chauncey Billups. Next up, Bruce, we've got the Sacramento Kings.
Last season was disappointing, but Coach Mike Brown has a new piece with DeMar DeRozan, joining a solid core of Domantas Sabonis, De'Aaron Fox, Malik Monk, and Keegan Murray. Look for this team to approach 50 wins this season. I don't have a whole lot more to add.
All right, World.
Well, the good news for the Kings, they've been terrible defensively for years. Last season, they were in the upper half of the league, 14th in defensive efficiency. That's their highest defensive efficiency rating since 2005, 2006. I mean, so they've got improvement there. Where they need to really hope for is better, another version of fourth quarter Fox, different than what we saw last season. He was the second worst three-point shooter in the clutch minutes last season, 7 for 33. The only one who was worse was the rookie of the year, Wemby. So, if he can improve that, get back to doing what they, being that guy that got that nickname, I see improvement from them.
Now, this has always been my favorite League Pass watch for well over a decade. The Sacramento Kings crowd, in-game entertainment, and just the development of players over the course of time has been a joy to watch. They're now at a stage where they're looking to compete for a playoff series, and DeMar DeRozan should certainly help them there. I watched their game actually last night against the Portland Trailblazers. Wonder why I watched that one. I don't think you need any hints there. But one thing that I did like to see is, watching DeMar DeRozan out there. He seems to be a very willing passer. He's playing off the ball. He's cutting off Sabonis. And if he's willing to sacrifice some shots for this team, maybe even open up some open looks for De'Aaron Fox, I really like this offense getting better. And I think Keegan Murray is going to get a lot more opportunities in the corner, because last year they had Harrison Barnes and Keegan Murray kind of just standing stagnant, waiting for the ball for the spot up three-pointer. This year, they only have Keegan doing that because DeMar's cutting off the ball and using his athleticism. So looking forward to this offense being improved. Defense hopefully can stay near average level. Next up, Bruce, we've got Wemby and the San Antonio Spurs.
Well, they may be my League Pass team for this season, because I think Victor Wembanyama is going to help the NBA sell a lot of season pass subscriptions.
Yeah.
Last week when we had PJ Carlesimo from ESPN Radio on, he told us that Wemby does things on the court that he has trouble even describing. It's going to be really intriguing to see if Chris Paul and Wemby can develop the kind of chemistry that they could, and how a guy like Devin Vassell might benefit from that too. Rookie Stephon Castle also has a chance to learn some tricks from CP3. So CP3 is there, and if he's able to kind of, share knowledge with a very young team, that could accelerate their growth a lot. And I expect them to get into the mid to high 30s for wins this year.
Wow. Will be?
They definitely have a chance to do that. I'm going to take a wait-and-see approach with them, because they were bottom 10 last season, offensively and defensively, efficiency-wise. So they have a lot of areas to improve. Now, when you have Wemby, that really helps things out. Last season, first player in a quarter of a century to average at least 20 points, 10 rebounds, and 3 blocks. The last one to do that before Wemby last season was Shaq in his MVP season of 99-2000. I mean, that's pretty good. And we're talking about a rookie. We're talking about a 19-year-old. So he has ungodly ability, generational talent. This is a team, reason to be excited about them. Last season, they started 5-30. I mean, it was just a disaster. They went one stretch for 2 months where they won 2 games. They were like 2-28 over a stretch. But at the end of the last season, 11-12 over the last 23 games. And listen to the teams they beat along the way: Oklahoma City, Indiana, Golden State, the Knicks, Phoenix, the Pelicans, Denver. These are teams that are battling for playoff position and had a lot to play for. They were knocking them off. They were really ruining their day. So there's potential. You can see why as Bruce mentioned, they could get a lot of League Pass subscribers this season. There's a lot to like about this team. I don't know how much they're going to improve, but they definitely should be improved.
Yeah, and as you talk about that stretch, there will be they actually beat the Suns twice during that span, which was quite unbelievable at the time. But just shows the potential of this team. One of the things that really hurt them is the injury to Devin Vassell, who's going to be out for a little bit. That's a bummer. Good news on Keldon Johnson. He has cut down 10 to 15 pounds. So there's guys around Wemby that are developing too. That should certainly help. Stephon Castle seems to be getting better just game by game in the preseason under the mentorship of Chris Paul. And let's face it, if this team is in games during crunch time, the last 5 minutes or so, and Chris Paul is able to be out there on the court, they're going to have a good chance to win a lot of these games with how crafty he is out there on the floor and his leadership style. So looking forward to watching Wemby and the Spurs. Definitely a good league pass pick there, Bruce. Now, last but certainly not least, we've got the Utah Jazz. Why don't you tell us more, Bruce?
You know, they're expected to be in the Cooper Flag sweepstakes, but they might be too good for their own good. Their backcourt is solid with second-year emerging star Keontae George. Lauri Markkanen's a legit alpha, and Walker Kessler's an improving big. They're 3-1 in the preseason, and that doesn't always mean a whole lot. But I'd expect a move or two, so trader Danny might sacrifice some short-term wins for some Cooper Flag ping-pong balls.
Nice. World B?
Well, as Bruce mentioned, there will be a contender for the worst record in the league. I don't think there's any question about that. They have a lot of areas to improve, but they don't need to improve in too many areas in terms like for defense, for example. They gave up 27 points per game in transition, which is one of the worst averages over the last 20 seasons. If they can improve on that, just cut down, try and play better transition defense, their world gets a whole lot easier. Jordan, their MVP, Lauri Markkanen is their big-time player. Jordan Clarkson could be their MVP. Last season, they were 18-0 when he had a positive plus-minus. They were 4-32 when he didn't. So if he can be on the court and create a positive plus, I know it's an overrated stat sometimes, but I found it funny. It's like if they can improve with him on there, yeah, they can get better. They can get away from the worst record in the league, but I don't see it happening.
So if they start him and take a 2-0 lead, they should just take him out of the lineup and
get him out of
move on.
Yeah. Get him out.
No pressure to Jordan Clarkson there with that stat, but that's a good pull there by you, World B. Well done. I think this team's going to be in the Cooper Flag sweepstakes. I think Danny Ainge is going to be just too tempted to want to be involved with having the opportunity to grab such a talent that would probably fit in very nicely with the Utah Jazz current roster. So I would expect him to make some moves or some decisions with the coaching staff to maybe limit some minutes, play some guys some more, make sure Taylor Hendricks takes 12 shots a game. And before we know it, they're going to have a shooting percentage like the Portland Trailblazers, as long as Lauri Markkanen doesn't have anything else to say about that. But if you guys can't tell, I mean, we just went an hour 18. So like Utah, we're pretty jazzed up for the season here on 48 minutes. That will do it for this one. We certainly appreciate you tuning in. Hope you guys are all excited as we are for the season to begin here in just over a week now. So with that will do it for this edition of the 48 Minutes podcast on the Lead, presented by Bet Online. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll be back with you next week to be sure you're up to date in 48 on all things around the association. Take care, everyone.